It's beer o'clock on Real Ale Craft Beer. Today we got a bottle of beer which is, if you drank bottled ale in the late 1990s, early 2000s, is synonymous with British, but more importantly, English ale drinkers. This beer was everywhere back in the day. Rick Mail, when he was alive, had a TV advert regarding Bombardier when he was dressed in cavalry with his sword, and Bombardier, if you remember the advert on the television. It was synonymous with if you thought of English ale back in the early 2000s, no doubt you thought of Bombardier. It's now from the Eagle Brewery, which is incidentally the same brewery as it was produced before. If you remember rightly, it used to be Charles Wells Brewing Company, Charles Wells Brewery, in Bedford in England. Locally, because they had a beer called Eagle Bitter. The Eagle Bitter was about 3.5% ABV, and they called it Eagle Ale or Eagle Bitter because it was brewed at the Eagle Brewery. So even when it was Wells and Youngs, it was always the Eagle Brewery. So they were purchased by Marston's Brewing Company. Charles Wells was purchased by Marston's. Marston's got purchased by Carlsberg. It all just becomes a bit of a mess, doesn't it? And you can probably hear me almost like a sigh in my voice, almost like it's been 10 years of like breweries being bought out by breweries and this brand by, and all of a sudden Carlsberg comes in, swoops up the blooming lot, literally. I'll tell you the story in a minute. You probably already know. Dark brown bottle, Bombardier bottle cap, 4.7% ABV. I went to the Eagle Brewery. I went to Charles Wells. I met a lovely lady called Jo. She was great. She got me down to Charles Wells. She actually worked for Charles Wells. Wells and Youngs, I should say. It's funny because she left to go to work for Carlsberg. She actually left to work for Carlsberg, and then if she's still at Carlsberg, she's probably like somehow like back dealing with Bombardier again and Wells and Youngs after all these years, because they were purchased by Carlsberg. 2-finger, slightly off-white head. The beer, let's concentrate on the beer a minute. 4.7% ABV, and in home bargains at this current time, it's £1.49. As of March 2024, it's £1.49 for a 500ml bottle. It looks good. It looks really good. Good carbonation, 2-finger, slightly off white head, amber beer in the glass. Let's get the aroma. It kind of smells the same aroma. I used to drink this by the gallon. When I first got it, it was actually before I actually opened the Real Ale Guide, the Real Ale Craft Beer channel. I was drinking this beer. I used to buy it in Threshers. I used to buy this beer in Threshers, which was an old-fashioned kind of wine beer type shop back in the day. But it was a premium product. It was a premium product back then. It's not bad now. Actually, fair play. As much as I'm shrugging my shoulders and, ooh, they're owned by Carlsberg, ooh, Marston's Carlsberg Brewing Company, ugh, like, as much as I dislike what those companies represent, and, you know, I'm going to say that it's not bad. It's not bad. It's. I drank this beer with Jim Robinson, the head brewer at the time of Wells and Young's Brewery in 2011 at the Eagle Brewery, and I've got to say, it's tasting as good in the bottle now as it did back then. I think it might have been 5.2% ABV though. I think the ABV's dropped on this. It does have brewing syrups in it. It is sweet. Tastes a little bit like Hobgoblin. We'll get to that in a moment. A little bit of licorice, a little bit of sweetness. A little bit of biscuitiness, I suppose. A little bit of bitterness on the back end, a little bit of pepperiness, spiciness. Would I drink 4 of these? Yes, I would probably drink 4 of these, and then I would take a pack of paracetamols to bed with me. Just so, you know, you wake up for your 1 o'clock in the morning wee, and you go, oh, the hangover's kicking in already. Pop a couple of paracetamols while you have a wee, go back to bed, and you wake up in the morning fresh-faced, with no hangover. These beers are brewed cheaply. They are brewed cheaply, and they are likely to give you a hangover. It's just the hard facts of where we are at the moment. So why does this taste a little bit like Hobgoblin? Right. I'll rate the beer, and then if you want to stay along for the story, stay along for the story. Rating for Bombardier, £1.49 for a 500ml bottle. Do you know what? You can't really fault that, can you? It's quite cheap. It's probably going to give you a headache. It probably will give you a headache. Take some paracetamol to bed with you. It's good enough for a 7 out of 10. It's good enough for a 7 out of 10. So thanks for the people who just come for the beer review. Here's the story behind why this beer tastes a little bit like Witchwood's Hobgoblin. So I got into beer 2010. 2007, meddling around a little bit with Badger, drinking a little bit of, as I said, Bombardier. I didn't really know what I was talking about though back then. I was very wet behind the ears with beer. You could buy Bombardier in Threshers, as I said. They were part of Wells and Young's Brewing Company. So Young's, this is how far back it goes. Young's was a brewery in London on the banks of the River Thames. Wells Brewery bought Young's. Wells Brewery closed down Young's Brewery, sold the building for flats. That then gets turned into flats. Wells makes a lot of money. Wells has a big brewery in Bedford. They become Wells and Young's Brewing Company. They become Wells and Young's Brewery. All of a sudden then, Young's beers, Ramrod, all those old beers, people really don't kind of like, you've only got to wait a few years before a brand disappears from people's minds. So the first thing to happen was Young's beers started to disappear from the beer drinkers' minds. The Ramrod, the Young's Special London Ale. Anybody remember Young's Special London Ale? They were brilliant beers, but they all slowly faded from memory. And this is what these big companies are good at. But there's always a bigger fish in the pond. there's always a bigger fish in the pond. So Wells and Youngs probably thinking, yeah, this is great now. We more or less, apart from Fuller's, we more or less control most of the southern part of the UK. Yeah, this is great. Until a recession hits, or a 2019 situation with a disease, and then we leave the European Union, and all of a sudden these breweries, some of these breweries are scrambling at this stage. They're like, oh my goodness me, we're in big trouble. Financially, we're in big trouble. So Marston's, who were slightly bigger than Wells and Youngs at the time, went, we're going to sweep up, we're going to sweep the board. So Marston's in 2019 bought Brains Brewery, they bought Wells and Youngs. Marston's, they bought Wychwood. So Marston's, let me go back a bit, I do apologise. Marston's had already bought Jennings, Wychwood, between the year 2000 and 2019. They bought Jennings, Wychwood, Ringwood Brewery. So Marston's were becoming a big affair. And then, of course, then we go back to this story with Marston's. They now own Ringwood, Wychwood, Jennings. They buy Wells and Youngs. They buy Brains during the situation. And it just goes on. And then all of a sudden, Marston's, oh, we spent out. Oh no, we spent out. We spent all our money. We're in trouble too. All of a sudden, Marston's realise that they've spent too much money and Marston's are in trouble. So what do Marston's do? Cry for help, cry for help. Carlsberg come in, buy a slice of Marston's. All of a sudden, a lager company from Denmark, which is doing rather well, I'm not going to take that away from them, all of a sudden, Carlsberg buys a massive slice, just like that, one big swing, woomph. They buy a massive chunk of the British brew. I mean, Wells and Youngs bought the beer company in Scotland. That horrible beer. What are they? Horrible stuff. Dreadful stuff. But Marston's bought those as well up in Scotland. So literally, when Marston's, and I'm pretty sure that Carlsberg have kept on buying stakes into. I'm pretty sure it's just going to become Carlsberg shortly. But all of it, like what I'm trying to say here. So you pick. Next thing you know, it's 2024. You're picking up a bottle of Bombardier that costs you £1.49 in home bargains, and you're reading on the back, Carlsberg Breweries, J.C. Jacobsen, Denmark. So, literally, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of heritage has just gone into the hands of a Danish lager brewing company, and it's all, I just find it all a bit strange, and that's why independent breweries of the, I'd say British company, they love to sell. Well, the mobile phone chip company, they were very quick to sell to America. Oh yeah, one of the most successful. It's almost as if British companies they just refuse to stay British. They go, we just want to sell out, we just want to go. We'll just become it's almost like we're a nation of sellouts. But I urge you, if you own a brewery, even if it becomes tough, I mean, something's only got to happen to Carlsberg, and then the next thing you know, what happens then? The next thing you know, there's breweries that can dominate again. They can become their own Wells and Youngs, and they can become their own Youngs, and they can become their own Brains, and they can become their own masters. But you've got to have hope. You've got to have a little bit of hope. So that's become a bit of a rant in the end, but it's quite sad. I don't like to see it, really. It's quite sad that all of the heritage of this country, all of the heritage from these British brewing companies, as with one, it happened so quickly. Everybody was concentrating about going to get their arm. 2 of those in 2019. Everybody, it kind of just went under the radar that Carlsberg swooped in and basically owns the British brewing industry. Sad times. Thanks for watching. Please put your comments in the comments box, subscribe to our daily beer and food reviews, give us a big fat thumbs up. Boom, cheers.